Hey, hello there. Welcome to another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thanks for clicking on the show. I'm your host, Don Kleppen, and if it's your first time here, this is a show where we try to take a journalistic look at all things cannabis as different states are legalizing. 37 right now in the U.S. have medical cannabis legal in some fashion, and 19 states have given the green light for recreational markets there for adults 21 and up. And here we just try and chronicle these things as they're changing the laws and keeping an eye on some entrepreneurs, some new businesses in different states that have legalized products that are out there, as well as talking with experts in different fields, people who have been growing for a long time, directors of cultivation for licensed operators, and then researchers, doctors, professors, people who are in labs and doing some sanctioned research and finding out some very, very interesting information about cannabis and how that's going to impact our understanding of it, maybe influence some laws, and potentially how we think of the plant, or maybe how we consume it, or what products are being made for us in the future to keep layering cannabis into our lives in different ways to improve our quality of life. I want to thank everyone who's been leaving ratings and reviews on different platforms. It's really, really nice to hear just some feedback on the show and the kind words everybody's been sharing about different guest interviews and the questions being asked and the comments that are being left on the show pages. Really appreciate all of those. If you are interested in leaving a question or a comment at any point, there is a link in the show description notes. Under each episode, you can see question or comment with an underline. If you simply click that, it'll take you to Gallus FM, and you can leave a question, you can leave a comment, anything you want to say regarding an episode or the show itself, feel free to go ahead and do that. Underneath the question or comment link is the show support link, and that, you'll notice now, will take you to the Patreon page. I had that set up before to take you to buymeacoffee.com, which is still there if you like, but I am starting to explore this Patreon page more, and in the coming weeks and months, I am going to be exploring ways of getting bonus content out there for subscribers, and anybody who's interested in supporting the show that way, if you click on that link, it'll take you to the Patreon show page for Cannabis Man, and you can subscribe for that upcoming bonus content, and I'll obviously be making announcements when I do sort of have that stuff in line and when that's going to be rolling out. But any support anyone wants to offer is really great, always appreciated, and definitely leave a rating or review if you haven't. Subscribe, follow the show, and share it with anybody that you know who likes podcasts and might be interested in the topics we cover here. And on that note, we have a lot to get to on this episode. Have the news joint wrap, got a packed interview with a guest who's an entrepreneur and has some exciting things coming up. And I want to talk about a comic somebody lent me that I read recently that I found very amusing and entertaining, and I'll talk a little about those things, plus the strain of the week and more on this 27th episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Let's do it. There it is. That is the intro made, created, written by my man Yusu Kim, aka Good Son Listener. If you haven't heard his stuff, definitely check him out on Instagram. He performs a lot around the Chicago area, and he's creating great music like that all the time. And let's start this episode off with the News Joint Wrap. This is brought to you by IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Think of it as the joint you can hit for all your Illinois cannabis news and reviews. And let's start with DNA test kits, which are assisting and selecting cannabis products for consumers. When you select cannabis products, medical patients rarely get any guidance from medical professionals, relying mostly on bud tenders' advice and labeled lab analysis results and basically your own firsthand experience. That's kind of how we've all gone about experimenting with which products we like. And there's a dimension that's missing from the insight there that Jason points out, Jason Brown of IllinoisNewsJoint.com. He talks about the genetics and the genetic factor in which products might be be fitting for you, which cannabis products might be better for you altogether. And all that information is being offered by Compassionate Clinics of America. You may remember my guest from last week's episode, listener Joe Mazza, who's at the Compassionate Clinics. So they're offering 2 testing kits, Strain Genie and Greenway DNA. And what those kits do, they detect genetic markers which have been associated with particular predispositions for disease, drug tolerance or receptivity, and metabolism for different substances. Jason calls it Think 23andMe for cannabis. And I'm sure you can think of the other sort of genetic profile services that are out there, Ancestry.com, Family Tree, those sorts of things. This genetic evaluation now is available specifically concerning cannabis products. How exciting is that? If you're interested in finding out more about your genetic profile and about which specific cannabis products your body might respond, poorly to or the best to, and your sort of tolerance and that kind of stuff, you can check out these kits, Strain Genie and Greenway DNA. Both of them are at-home test kits. You submit a saliva and cheek swab sample, and you get the results several weeks later. Jason has a whole great article here depicting his sort of review and his experience with the whole thing. He tried both kits out, and you can sort of get some more details on if you're interested in this and which ones might be better for you. Just check out the website. And Aroma Grow schedules more free grow classes. These are for beginners. The owner, Brian Marks, has set the fall schedule for the free classes. It's a 3-class series. It'll discuss all information that anyone needs to start growing, which includes how to propagate seeds, repot and clone plants, as well as information on nutrient deficiencies, pest control, and more. They run the classes on Sunday nights and Wednesday mornings. The Sunday classes are set for 7 to 9 p.m. on December 4th, the 11th, and 18th. Wednesday morning are 9 to 11 a.m. December 7th, 14th, and 21st. This is in Wheeling, the Aroma Grow Store location on 668 Wheeling Road. You can sign up for the classes by calling 847-947-2857 or email aromagrowstore@gmail.com with your name, email, phone number, and which set of classes you would like to attend. Aroma Grow Store is thinking of offering other classes in the future on indoor gardening, microgreens, and organic sustainable living as well. And Koala Tea Glass Pumpkin Bash is set for October 22nd. Koala Tea Glass is back this fall hosting its annual Halloween event. It's family and 420 friendly, and it's open to the public. The annual Koala Tea Glass Pumpkin Bash is set for 6 p.m. October 22nd in Oglesby. The event will host a kids costume contest, pet costume contest, that sounds fun, pumpkin catapult, trick-or-treat, games for kids, live glass blowing, pumpkin painting, building a bong pumpkin, 21 and up for that, food vendors, and more. Also a spooky shakedown with some of their favorite craft and merchandise available. The address is TBA right now. So if you're interested in either of those events, the Pumpkin Bash or the Aroma Grow Free Grow classes, or if you'd like to know more about those DNA test kits, you can check out those articles at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Now I'd like to share with you my strain of the week. This is where I go through the cannabis strain that I've been really enjoying smoking on through the week. I typically have multiple strains at any one time, and I do like to alternate them, but one stands out in a given week more than the others, and I like to share my experiences with that strain on the show here. And this week, my strain of the week is Wild Berry Breath Flower from Bedford Grow. Regular listeners of the show will remember Matt Ross of the first episode, Director of Cultivation for Bedford Grow. It's a relatively new product. There's not much known about it. The THC listed on Sunnyside's website where I purchased this is 23.28%, and it's known as a happy, relaxed, and energetic sort of strain. That is what I have felt. I definitely like to smoke throughout my day. I'll start my day with cannabis and coffee, and I've been doing some of these recordings more at night, so I've been pairing the cannabis with some whiskey or tequila. Tonight it is some Blanco tequila, and the Wild Berry Breath is a hybrid. It's the physical nature of it is really pretty. It's got red hairs and purple highlights throughout, and as indicative of many purple budded flowers, it has that kind of citrusy, fruity inhale. It definitely has that scent, definitely getting some, I would guess, limonene, as I mentioned, there's not much listed information about this because it's relatively a new product. But limonene, I would guess, is one of the dominant terpenes here because of the citrus and fruity strains or the notes and the aroma that I'm getting. And the energetic and happiness is something I felt here. I wouldn't go as far as euphoria, but it's just sort of a pleasant positivity. And the energetic part of it is something I've definitely noticed, especially at night. You know, I'll sort of, after dinner, I'll take a pull of this, and it's given me a sort of second wind to work on some writing or sort of stay up after my fiance goes to bed and just kind of work on some different projects if I am. It's this wild berry breath has kind of been giving me the energy to do that. So that's the strain of the week for me. I'm enjoying this wild berry breath from Bedford Grow, and I'm smoking it today out of something that my guest this week sent to me. This is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I appreciate it, Nick. This is cool. It's known as a CS Drift, and it is a Chicago product. It's a bong that's made of acrylic, not glass. So I was just flicking that there. It's really durable, it's clear, but it's super lightweight. And that acrylic, as I said, it makes it a little durable, so it's not going to shatter if you drop it. And it's even more cool is that there's no slide that you have to remove from this thing. This is a dual carb clear hole functioning bong. So it basically functions the way a bowl does, and you just sort of plug the two holes as you're inhaling it. And then when you want to clear it, you just uncover those holes and continue the inhale, and you just sort of clear the shaft there. But I have been using this since it arrived, and I really, really enjoy this thing. And if you're interested in it, I'm putting out a video on the show socials where I'm kind of showing it off a little bit. And I definitely, if you're interested, if you like bongs and the idea of an acrylic bong from a Chicago company, a local product, sort of appeals to you, look for the CS Drift coming soon to 420pipes.com. So cheers, Nick, and cheers to you, listener, to the wild berry breath flower from Bedford Grow out of the CS Drift. Here we go. Yup. That's the stuff. Wow. I'm fairly certain that I've never smoked a bong in a closet before, and there's a lot of smoke in here. This is fun. Listener, my guest today is a cannabis entrepreneur. He started a website called 420pipes.com. He is based out of Springfield, Illinois, and he's here today to share with us the idea that led to this business opportunity here, and or to the business, I should say, to the company that he's running, and what sort of shaped his life, and how cannabis has played a major role in it, and how you can get involved as well. Listener, please welcome Nicholas Thomas. Welcome, Nicholas.
Hey, Don. How's it going?
Very well. I should have asked before I kind of started recording, but do you Nicholas or Nick? Well, how do you prefer to be identified?
It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
My friends call me Nick. My mom calls me Nicholas.
Right on. Okay, cool. Well, I'll go with Nick then, and thank you for coming on the show. I'm curious. You mentioned to me that cannabis sort of played a major factor in your life, starting at a young age. How so?
Yeah. So, when I was younger, I was in a more traditionally religious household. I'll put it more conservative in the way that we believed that cannabis was like a demon drug. Makes you susceptible to the devil possessing you, all that crazy stuff.
Devil's lettuce. Yeah.
That's right. And then when I was an older teenager, 16, 17, I started realizing this drug doesn't do the damage that people are saying that it does, right? Like, people are telling you that if you smoke cannabis, if you partake in weed, that you're going to destroy your mind and, all brain damage and all sorts of stuff for us.
Right.
And I was watching Snoop Dogg and Tommy Chong be some of the most successful and creative people on the planet at the same time. And it just didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, how can this be damaging your brain when Snoop Dogg is accomplishing anything that he's ever set his mind to?
True. Yeah, no, I love that. That's a great point. I mean, you're like, hey, I'm seeing the success right in front of me. Both things can't be true.
Yeah, exactly. I started started to see a little bit of like the contradiction there. And then I started talking about it with my friends, and of course, we were all part of the same church, so it was like taboo, and I had to like get really comfortable with some of my friends, and we were like, we want to try this, we want to do this, blah, blah, blah. I lived in a small town in southern Illinois called Taylorville, so there wasn't like nearly as much like access to cannabis at this time, and of course it was pre-legalization anyway.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Where I'm from, it was just kind of, you got what you got. But after a few of us talked about it, we were like, what, we're going to try this. We're going to do this without our parents knowing. And
Sure.
I ended up buying some cannabis off of somebody from work. Whenever I was 17, I worked at Walmart. She got me hooked up with somebody here in Springfield.
Right.
And I remember doing that first deal, as they call it, as a 17-year-old kid.
The Walmart Connect, you can get it at Walmart always.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. So then, whenever that happened, we tried to keep it on the low, but as they always do, our parents found out. We were like super excited about this, so we got a few people in our group like trying cannabis and like getting high for the first time. While we're all younger, we took it to Florida, and we were like smoking in Florida on vacation. It was a great time. And then our parents found out. But where I'm from, if your mom finds out, it's like, yeah, you might get in trouble. But when the church finds out, you get shunned. So out of all of my group of friends, like everybody else got like not in as much, quote unquote trouble with the church at the time, versus I got shunned because it was my idea to get the cannabis, and it was like my graduation party that we brought it in from. We had bought it at and everything. So they shunned me from my church.
Interesting. and obviously, I mean, you mentioned, you're from a small town, and church is a big part of your family and your friend group. So I have to imagine that must have been a pretty big deal for you.
Yeah. I mean, we weren't allowed to like spend time with anybody really that was outside of the church. And at that point in time, if you want to get back in, you have to still act like you are part of the church. So you can spend time with anybody that's outside of the church, but you can't spend time with anybody that's inside because you're shunned.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty rough place to be. Not a lot of options for socializing for you at that time then.
No, but what that caused me to do at 17, I knew I needed to get out of my mom's house. I knew I needed to get away from that situation, even though my mom was doing what she thought was best, of course. Right. I knew that it wasn't best for me to be there. So, I was going to college at the time, and I was 17.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Land of Lincoln.
Oh, okay. Sure, yeah.
Or Lincoln Land, sorry. Land of Lincoln's a credit union. I went to Lincoln Land. Lincoln Land.
Let's get that straight. Yeah, Lincoln Land. Okay, I gotcha.
Yes. So I went to Lincoln Land there. That's where I was going at the time. And I worked at Best Buy selling computers. And then I also got a job working as an office administrator at a behavioral health clinic here because I wanted to go into like psychology.
Oh, okay.
And then so that's when I kind of fell in love with the business side of things. I was like helping them set up like a bunch of systems and all of that over there. And I started getting really stressed out again, and I started using cannabis again. And I was like, you know what? This is definitely not what all the people that are basically saying is. It's not the negative substance that everybody thinks it is. It's not a drug, and it's not this addictive thing that's ruining my life. It's actually helping me deal with the stress that I'm going through right now. Right.
Yeah. I totally get that. I can kind of remember that watershed moment of myself as well, of just sort of realizing that the narrative that, you'd heard for your whole life about something was not only untrue, but sort of the opposite of what was true. Yeah. And just kind of having to go forward in the world like that, recognizing that, trying to decide whether that misinformation was malicious, from the people who were communicating it, or just out of ignorance because they didn't know any better than what they had been told as well.
Tough. And in their case, I'm going to go ahead and just write it off as ignorance for the most part. Of course, they've all been part of the church their whole lives. All they know is the church. It's kind of hard to blame them for their stance,
Yeah, I agree. And I think I don't think it's, it doesn't serve anything to sort of, to blame or to kind of, I guess, because I felt the same way ultimately I felt that most of the people who had told me that growing up, they didn't know any better themselves. There's many people who pass the narrative of the reefer madness and the devil's lettuce who sort of, maybe contributed to that misinformation. A lot of them hadn't tried cannabis for themselves. So they were just kind of going based off of what the messaging was from the government, who they trusted, and just felt that was the safest message. And so I totally agree with you. It doesn't really do anybody any good to kind of, point fingers or be like, yeah, like this was, this you should have known better, or you should have told me the truth. It's more like, when the truth is something that the majority of us don't know, or that it's kept under wraps, that's kind of the situation that we still find ourselves in, why this conversation about cannabis is so muddled all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So so you mentioned obviously that's how you kind of got started, and you're at this point now where you're working multiple jobs and you're stressed out, and you've started using cannabis again to help with your stress, and now you're sure that it's a good thing, and that that you wanna, I'm assuming, kind of be more involved with it. What was where did you go from there? Yeah,
so for the next couple of years, I was still at that time I was still 17. When I turned 18, I immediately went and started working in banking, because I knew I needed to get a retirement account. I needed to get prepared for the future, so that way I could escape from my parents' house and be set up for success for myself personally. And so I started looking at opportunities, to make money, and not that I'm necessarily I was just looking for a way to make a name for myself at the time.
Sure, yeah.
And when I went to the bank and they had the opportunity for me to have a 401k or something set up like that, they offered a job to me whenever I was talking about what I wanted to do. So I became a bank teller, and then I became a loan officer pretty quickly. And while I was there, of course I was still, partaking in cannabis. I had gotten a few people around me, to try it that were interested in it, and they enjoyed it. And I tried some other things. I had a board game that I made during the pandemic in 2020 that I tried to launch on Kickstarter. And that's what really taught me about marketing and stuff, and building a brand, and how fun that was to actually set up and build a company of your own. Even though it didn't really work out, it was just a really fun thing to try. And I was going to pick that back up whenever I had failed at that. But I actually went and started a new job as a loan officer at a different credit union versus the bank that I was at. And while I was there, I had this epiphany as I kept losing and breaking every pipe that I owned. I was like, I wish I could buy these things for really cheap, because I'm going over to my favorite head shops over here and spending a bunch of money. It's I wish I could just have something cheap.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So at first it was that's where we got the name 420 Pipes. I started selling chillums and stuff online for $4.20 last October. I was still a full-time loan officer over there. I was still working on some other stuff with my personal life and career. So we were just doing this as a little small thing, and I was just learning about e-commerce and everything. But as we grew, and as I got more used to online sales, and I was navigating the industry, especially on the online side of things, which it's really complicated to advertise, grow. Basically the things that you would do to grow an e-commerce store, you can't do in our space.
Right.
So, I was we were learning a lot of different aspects of that, and how to grow in this space without the traditional means of marketing, advertising. And I realized that a lot of my favorite head shops, a lot of my favorite places, the OGs that had been doing this for a long time, they didn't really they didn't sell online. And what's going to happen is, especially as we work to destigmatize the cannabis industry, and everything gets a little bit more socially acceptable to sell online, or Amazon and Walmart and everything, instead of trying to be cryptic about selling bongs, or just oh yeah, we have bongs now. Mm-hmm. How many businesses is that going to put out? That's going to put out businesses like they did to bookstores.
Right. Yes. It's a very, very fair point, and I think that's an astute observation. Once safe banking does pass, and once the gates are thrown open, and the federal government says it's okay to sell cannabis and cannabis products the same way we do alcohol and all that. Yes, yeah, those companies like Amazon's, the Walmarts, the Targets, they're going to be carrying some of that stuff too, and that's a good point. It'll definitely be interesting to see kind of the business landscape at that moment.
Absolutely. And then at the same time, when I had that epiphany, that was back, that was in December that I realized that we needed to transition into like more of a marketplace to fit the need of the market for, the consumer, not only them, but also for the businesses as well to stay on top of the future and to give them a spot to go that would be like a good online marketplace. So we started with that, but we didn't really start implementing anything until April. At the end of April, we started working with Prairie State Hemp. They were our first vendor. They were interested in the concept of the marketplace, and so since then we've been expanding that. And at that time, when I started the marketplace, and when I started really realizing this is the direction that I wanted to go, at the credit union that I was working at, they had no defined cannabis policy or anything. So I opened my business account there. And I was on LinkedIn. I never really used LinkedIn, but I updated my page as to being related to my business. And then they fired me.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah, and then after I left, they updated their policy to say that they won't do business with anybody that is related to the cannabis industry at all.
So you were sort of the harbinger, the flag bearer of someone attempting to do a cannabis business utilizing this credit union, and they basically said no to that, fired you, and then took a stance saying that they're not going to do business with any cannabis businesses. Is that right?
Essentially, yeah. Yep, that's what they did.
Well, hey,
and so,
not everybody can see the future when it's coming, so, it is what it is. But it seems like 420 Pipes is working well for you. I'm looking at the website right now, and listener, if you want to check it out, it's the numbers 420pipes.com. And it looks like, Nicholas, you're continuing that $4.20 sort of sale every day. There's a drop down and a link right there on your page that takes you to a bunch of items that are there for sale that are all priced at $4.20. That's cool.
Yeah. We stay true to that. Of course, that's where the name came from. I went in an ideal world, because I don't want to directly compete with all of the people that are already in the space. I want to help them because we're a business solution as far as businesses go. We still are growing, so we still have our own inventory, and because of that, we buy items that we can sell for $4.20. We get deals like that. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lost lead, but we're able to consistently keep that promise of always having that store and always having products available for that price. And if you check across the whole thing, we have some good deals.
Oh, yeah.
Items.
There's another drop down right next to that. You've got $7.10 every day. I imagine just kind of like a little step up with more. And then there's, country made, USA made stuff. There's local, as you mentioned, Prairie State Hemp is there. Wander Glass looks like a Good Witch, and Upper Limits Midwest, just to name a few of these local companies you guys buy from. So I think that's really cool too, is the notion of, as you mentioned, you're based out of Springfield, Illinois, and you're clearly, I think, if I am getting your message correctly here, I think you're creating not only a store for individuals to buy from, but you're also selling other businesses products. Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
And these are local businesses, from around Illinois. At least a lot of you're adding another place. They'll sell their inventory, but you are creating another brand. You're creating another shop where you're showcasing local businesses' products as well.
Yeah, if it's like Amazon, I always call it Amazon or Chewy.com for bongs.
Okay.
Essentially for businesses, but for us right now, the way we do everything is we actually cover everything from top to bottom. So we ship out the products. We have a fulfillment center here in Springfield.
Okay.
And right now with our contract, 20 square feet of that is included for most of these people. And when they're smaller people, like a Good Witch, for instance, she's the only person that's not in Illinois. She's actually in California. She's our first out-of-state vendor. She is an older woman, in her 70s, I believe.
Okay.
But she's an influencer on TikTok. She's got like 260,000 followers or something like that, and she
Good for her.
handcrafts everything that she makes.
That's amazing, and that does sound worthy of supporting too. Handcrafted stuff is the best.
Absolutely, yeah, and I couldn't pass that up. Like, I saw the quality of the material, I saw what she was making, and I saw like her brand and everything, and I was like, I have to work with her.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm really excited about that. And of course, Prairie State Hemp and Upper Limits and Wonderglass, those are all people that are here in Springfield with me. So I really like working with them.
Yeah, I bet, and I'm sure they love it as well. That's fantastic, just to be able to get a footprint that's outside of the geographic area, of just Springfield. You're exposing their products to a wider audience and stuff.
Yeah.
Question, is it mostly glassware? You mentioned bongs. I see there's bowls and chillums and stuff kind of on the site. Are there more products available than just pipes?
So there are chillums. Well, that's obviously a prep, but there's like ashtrays, rolling trays. Basically, anything that's going to be under the sun is going to be on there. Right now, we're working on getting some grow stores on there. We just haven't had anybody sign the contract yet that has a grow store, and I would like to have somebody that is like passionate about about that industry, about that side of the industry, growing and everything, be the store for me because, unfortunately for me, I have a black thumb. So I would like for that person, right now I want to add the grow store. I don't have one on there. So whoever decides to be our first partner is going to have a lot of control over that part of the market on 420 pipes.
Hey, right on. Breaking news. You heard it here, listener. You heard it here first. There is an opportunity, 420 pipes on the grow side. They're looking for a grower partner. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And then also, we're working with one of our vendors to potentially do some CBD stuff as well. That presented some problems for us early on when we weren't quite like big enough to deal with CBD. Whenever I was basically running everything for fun out of my pocket. We were selling some CBD stuff. So I didn't really necessarily at that time have the right infrastructure for it. But now I'm working with some partners to potentially do some CBD on that as well.
That's very exciting, too. I know that there's many people very interested, and understandably so, in CBD products. I've had several guests on talking about the medical potential of different CBD and using it and how many different symptoms it can address and everything. So I think that's a good decision, and it's exciting to imagine CBD come into this as well. One other thing. So you did mention, right, so there's one of your, the Good Witch, that she's not in Illinois. She's a California person, so you're not limiting yourself to only Illinois producers here. You envision for the future of 420 pipes like that you would be able to have products on here from people anywhere. Right.
So the whole point of the Smoke Local thing is like a lot of people, whenever they think of supporting their local community, they think they can't buy online. And for me, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to teach people that that's not going to work long term. Of course, all of us want to support, especially here in Springfield, we have a big, support local economy type thing here.
Yeah.
We all go to small businesses here, and that is one thing that I really appreciate about my community. So as we increase our partners and vendors, you'll be able to search for vendors that by their geographical location.
Wow.
So if you want to support somebody that's in your city, you can still support somebody that's in your city, and you can take advantage of our services online.
That's really cool. I even think that's as you mentioned, kind of that's everybody does. I think we have an instinct that we do want to support local, but at the same time, it's foolish to pretend like Amazon hasn't sort of changed the model of consumption for people. The convenience of online shopping, that's not going away. And so I think this innovation you're talking about, the ability to search an online store by localities so that you could then support the specific businesses in certain cities and towns that you want to, but still have the convenience of buying it from home on your computer. I think that's fantastic.
Yep. I'm excited. Excited. I haven't really seen anybody else doing that yet.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither. I think it'd be a very cool innovation, and I definitely think it's going to go well. I think that is something. Just being able to navigate that is giving people the ability to still have the convenience and also support the local businesses that they want to. I think that's something missing from online shopping right now.
Yep, and luckily, in our industry too, that's one of the things that's still heavily localized. So like I think this is like one of the best industries that we could get into to show how we can support local economy online, because most of the head shops and stuff, like you don't really see like a national head shop brand, right? It's like the one that's in your town, and that one's always super cool and everybody always loves that person, but they're not selling online, so they're you know capped kind of to what their economy is looking like. And one thing too, you know, I've actually heard this from some head shop owners here in Illinois. Of course, you know, our price of cannabis is so high.
Compared to with other state markets, yes, right now. With the exception of New Jersey, I have to say New Jersey is making a case to be the biggest price gougers in the legal cannabis market right now.
New Jersey always does a really good job at showing us up.
I don't know what it is, but they want to. It seems like, yes.
Yeah, but yeah, I had one of this new company that is signing actually a contract to be exclusively selling online through 420 Pipes. Is actually a Chicagoland company that does sheet metal. But they'll be doing B2B, and we also help them with B2B. We have a small distribution team as well.
Well, when you say B2B, what do you mean?
Like we help like glass blowers and like Prairie State Hemps move their CBD and stuff to businesses as well.
Got it. I see. So that in between the facilitator, sort of from the producers to the sellers, sort of, that's where you're existing. I got you.
Yep. As we grow, we're trying to be like a full solution to help the market as much as we can, like to help it be as fast and as easy as possible, without being the ones that have to like own and do everything, right? Like my dream is to easily connect a glass blower, a head shop, and a consumer all together in the fastest, most convenient, most profitable for everybody, best way possible.
Wow.
And so we've been working on that. But yeah,
I think that's very cool, and it's an admirable goal, and I definitely think that there's some opportunity, especially as we were just talking about, once federally some of these roadblocks are lifted, when we do see safe banking, and hopefully, fingers crossed, sometime soon here, actually federally decriminalizing this thing, to be able to see businesses kind of throw the doors open and, as we say, innovate freely the way that other industries are able to do that. I very much look forward to that day with cannabis, and I think 420pipes.com is placing itself in a good position to be kind of facilitating that ecosystem you were just talking about between producers and the consumer and the head shop as well, just kind of like linking everything together in this online space. So yeah, listener, I definitely encourage, go check it out, 420pipes.com. And Nicholas, I like to wrap these things up with some quick hits questions.
Sure.
Yes or no usually, but you don't have to think too deeply about it. You game for this?
Yeah.
All right, cool. First quick hit question, a morning bird or night owl? Which are you?
Unfortunately, I'm a night owl.
Oh, that's okay. I think either one is okay to be, and I've had people talk about, they're like, well, you have to be both, if you're like sometimes with people who have families and businesses or whatever, it's sometimes you really kind of are stretching it at both ends, but I think
Absolutely.
Naturally I'm a night owl as well, and but I think, being productive and business oriented, I think you grow into a morning bird at some point in our lives anyway, but I feel that night owl definitely. Special food or cuisine? What's a restaurant, if it's a special occasion for you, birthday, celebrating something, what's a restaurant or, a specific dish or something that you really want to go hit?
Sure, yeah. Happy Sushi here in Springfield.
Okay.
My favorite food is spicy tuna, spicy tuna sushi roll. So
yeah,
I go over there all the time when they're open. Right now, they're closed for the month because they're on vacation. They're a family restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool, though.
Hands down the best sushi I've ever had.
That's great. Love sushi, and I definitely love a spicy tuna roll, and that's pretty cool. I like the Springfield plug there. It sounds tasty. And drug of choice, meaning I ask this of all my guests, and this is your daily fix. We both love cannabis. I know that's always a possibility there. But are you a coffee drinker? Do you have like tea in the afternoon, wine, beer? Like, what's your what's a daily fix for you?
Yeah, I don't really drink alcohol, except for special occasions. I'm just not a big fan on how it makes me feel.
Sure.
But with cannabis, I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little bit of a heavy user.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit of like a multiple, especially now that I'm self-employed. It's kind of like a multiple times a day type thing.
Yep. I hear you. I feel that too, and it's totally fine by me. I think cannabis tolerance is a big part of that too. I always, when I'm talking with people about that, I have plenty of friends who enjoy it and partake with me, but they don't do it nearly as often, and so we'll be sitting there and they're kind of just like, man, I don't know how you can do stuff like this, and it's just like, well, after a while it becomes easier, and it makes everything better, so why not?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was actually, one of these bongs that I'm about to send you that for this company that I just partnered with, I was showcasing the largest one at a party, and like everybody there liked cannabis, but not to the extent that I like cannabis, or not to the extent that I do cannabis.
Uh-huh.
So I would like get a bowl ready for them, and then they'd be really high for like the rest of the night. And meanwhile, I'm like sitting out there for like with everybody, doing a bowl with everybody, and then I was just like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah.
What's going on, everybody?
Yes.
They're all baked.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. I've been there many times, but it's there's a joy to being that sort of the cannabis man at the party. So that's I think there's a joy to that as well, and I look forward to the day when we have like large cannabis events, and we have a bunch of people with high cannabis tolerances and experience and innovations there kind of gathering together, and we can have some smoke-offs. That'll be looking forward to that.
It's one of my favorite things about like the THCO Delta 8 market type stuff. It's because there's far less regulation on that, so you can get like a gummy worm from Prairie State Hemp, for instance, that's like a 50 milligram THCO gummy worm, and most people are not used to stuff like that. So you tell somebody to like take half a gummy worm while you're taking a whole gummy worm, and for the average cannabis consumer, they should probably not take the whole gummy worm.
Right.
And so it's always fun to see people not take you seriously, be the highest that they've ever been in their whole life. Yeah.
Yep. Totally agree with that. Yeah, and I think that's the dosing. What you were just talking about, that notion of kind of how many milligrams to take and which edibles and all of that. It's another just sort of fluid part of the cannabis industry that we're at still. And I've talked to some researchers on the show before about that. There's a lot of interesting things about cannabis compared with alcohol, like if you could, like you were just mentioning, like you could pack a fat bong or like roll a huge joint with some infusions in it, and it's hard to know how much of the THC makes it into each individual person. How large of a hit does somebody take? Do you hold it in for 5-10 seconds, or do you immediately exhale, mixing tobacco with it or not? So that's sort of why it's difficult to pin down oftentimes, like with smoking, how much cannabis is in something at any one time, and then how much of it is obviously impacting somebody. But all of that I'm looking forward to some innovations on that front as well, as this gets more normalized and
absolutely more regulation will help with that as well.
100% for sure. Next quick hit, what's your music? What do you vibe to if you're trying to chill out after a stressful day or get yourself amped for a pitch meeting? What's some music you go to?
Sure, I'm a pretty big fan of like hip hop and also like lo-fi pop, and also just pop, man.
Yeah.
But like on any given day, you'll probably find me listening to like Kanye West, Drake, Kendrick Lamar, some of the top
classics.
hip hop artists.
Oh yeah,
classic people. That's what I listen to basically every day. It gets me through the day.
Oh sure, totally. And I love lo-fi beats as well. That's something I always throw on whenever I'm writing or doing any kind of like busy work, but I want to have some music going. I think that those instrumental beats are some of my favorite soundtracks to have. And then final quick hit. Sports teams. Do you play any or watch any sports? Who do you root for on a regular day?
I'm gonna be honest. If full transparency, all right, I'm not a sports guy.
Fair.
I grew up like skateboarding, so I like skateboarding a little bit, but I don't even know like the sports world with that.
Oh sure.
But I'm in Illinois, so you gotta rep the Bears, of course.
There you go.
It's the Bears.
Final one then. We'll end on how about movies? What do you watch? TV or a favorite movie, something that whenever it comes on, you'll always leave it on kind of a thing?
Absolutely, yeah. The Dark Knight, man.
Oh yeah. That's one of mine as well. Whenever I see it, that's going on. That's just a classic.
Yep, I'm like flipping through the channels. It's on. It's staying on. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I own the 4K collection, but I'll still sit there and watch it through the commercials. controversial sometimes.
Totally elevated the superhero movie to a whole other thing. It's in its own genre, I think.
Yeah, and now it's been a long enough time too. Like when that movie came out, I was young, and so like I'm very nostalgic for that movie. I remember seeing it as a kid, and that kind of like being what ignited my, superhero journey, besides Spider-Man, of course.
Yeah, sure. Well, listen, Nicholas Thomas, CEO of 420pipes.com, thank you again for jumping on the show today and kind of sharing your journey a little bit and just kind of sharing, the vision for the business you have going, which, as we were talking about, it sounds very exciting to me. I think it's a cool marketplace that you're building, and I think that the future is bright, especially as we were saying, as cannabis gets more normalized. I think 420 Pipes is going to be a marketplace that people are hitting.
All right. Thank you, man. Thank you for the episode.
Absolutely, for sure. And have a great rest of your day. We'll talk again.
All right. You too. Thank you.
And there it is. Remember, you can see some of the products that we were talking about and what's available that Nick has for sale for $4.20, and some of the other cool things they have there at 420pipes.com. And look for the CS Drift that I mentioned. They've got 3 different sizes of this. I have the 19-inch one. Nick mentioned there's a 16-inch and a 24-inch one, and they're coming out with different colors. This one is clear, but they'll have different names for the different color options too. One last thing I wanted to sort of bring to your attention, listener, that I thought was pretty cool here. A friend of the show, loaned me a comic book, just a short comic, about 30 pages or so, with a lot of visuals, and it was called The Secret History of the War on Weed. The comic was written by Brian Posehn, actor and comedian. Might recognize him from Crank Yankers or Mr. Show with Bob Odenkirk and David Cross, and Jerry Duggan, who's a writer and has worked on many comics like Hulk, Hawkeye, and he wrote the Deadpool comic with Brian Posehn. It's a very funny and enjoyable comic. It had some great puns and cool visuals on some pages that I thought were fantastic. Definitely a fun, entertaining way to just turn your brain off and enjoy a creative fiction about America's war on drugs. Definitely fictional. They make that very clear right from the first page, but it was a funny sort of telling of it. And obviously the harm of the war on drugs is very real, but this comic, like other effective pieces of art and comedy, it shines a light on the truth while delivering the message in a unique and entertaining way. Definitely best if you read it stoned. I admittedly enjoyed it more stoned than I did sober. It's definitely a worth your time, though. And it's the one issue that's out now, and you can find it just on the internet. Google it wherever. I saw it available on a few different sites. And the second issue of the comic is coming out 4/20 of 2023. So you can look forward to that if you enjoy the first one. And thanks, Kevin Ballweers, friend of the show and longtime friend of my brother Dan. Thanks for lending me the comic. It was definitely worth the read, and I encourage you, listener, to check that out as well. As I said, it was just kind of a 20-minute thing that, as I was stoned, some of those visuals and just sort of the absurdness of the story was very entertaining, and I think you'll like it too. One more news item here, listener. Oklahoma announced this week that they'll be holding a special election for marijuana legislation initiative in March of next year, 2023. The governor officially called for the special election so that voters could decide on cannabis legislation. Activists had pushed to place it on next month's ballot, but it faced obstacles in the state Supreme Court after complaints were filed and deadlines had passed, so the special election for Oklahoma will take place in the spring. But I thought it was noteworthy that a conservative state like Oklahoma appointed a special election. The governor thought it was necessary enough, that it was a big enough issue that they needed a special, specific election for that in the spring instead of just waiting through the next election cycle. It just, again, lends itself to the notion that there is a lot of support from the American people, more and more support all the time, and it's an ever greater and greater veracity for legalizing, or certainly just decriminalizing cannabis. And it's encouraging to see states like Oklahoma making this front and center of an issue. And as I've mentioned on a previous episode, there are several states who have cannabis initiatives on their ballots come next month. So it's very important that we pay attention to the midterm elections. It shapes policies, and I've mentioned this in some recent talks that I've been doing. I do this sort of address on Wisdom, the app, on Mondays, Monday sort of in the early afternoon. It's just something that I do. It's another sort of forum where I'm talking about cannabis. But there are several states that have cannabis initiatives, and if there was ever a time that I think we could make an election about a single issue, I really think that cannabis could be it this time. And if you're only going to pay attention to one issue this midterm, let it be cannabis. Let that decide. Figure out which candidates are supportive of cannabis measures, figure out which ones are opposed, maybe, if there are any opposed, and maybe that won't distinguish between the candidates. Maybe they're both pro-cannabis, and hey, that's great. Then you sort of can allow something else to decide it then. But, there's no losing if that's the case. But if there is, I think if there was a time to make it about a single issue, the economy is always certainly important, and that does matter. But I think, we have the enthusiasm, and this really is the time to push forward. I admittedly, like I've said, I didn't expect President Biden to make the announcement for federal pardons. And admittedly, hopefully the state governors will follow suit. Some of them have in a surprising way, like the governor of North Carolina, I believe. That's great. But, states like Texas, states like Indiana, they have said that they're not going to follow suit. And so that's where there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And obviously, as we've said, safe banking, decriminalization, certainly rescheduling or maybe hopefully descheduling is on the table, because the other exciting part of President Biden's announcement was that he directed the Attorney General and Health and Human Services Secretary to take a look at those exact things, rescheduling and potentially descheduling of cannabis. So there's a lot of excitement here, and now is the time to push for it. And these midterms are right now. This is our opportunity. These are just a few weeks away. So if you're going to pay attention to one thing with the candidates, let it be that. And let's let the chips fall where they may. And maybe come the new year, the message will have been heard, and we'll really start to see some major changes in the near future here, just beyond the horizon. And with that, let's wrap up this week's episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is an original production of myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music by Yusu Kim, aka Goodson. Other music by Pat Perez, and logo designed by Vorbroker Media. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe, and share whenever you can.